And I'm Jeffrey. On the 23rd of April or April the 23rd. The official window, I think I'm correct, should have been today or should be today for the primaries for whoever wants to do their primaries. So we've seen the APC done their listing, the PDP backed by Nyesom Wike also done their listing to see what happens in terms of who is contesting for what position, whether at the National Assembly, at the State Assembly, governors, as well as the presidential election. So it's officially now open for all parties. So we have more than 20 parties, about 20 or 22 parties, because 3 more were registered by the Independent National Electoral Commission. So we should be seeing a lot of movement, but of course, eyes are on the quote-unquote, the big boys, from the APC to the PDP to the ADC and maybe Labour. So guys, that's just a political update. Yesterday we were expecting, perhaps because of the urgency of the matter, because the Supreme Court can adjourn and come back same day if they want to, but it didn't happen for the ADC because of their own case. But I'm sure within the week they should get an answer from the Supreme Court, both PDP and the ADC, so that we know exactly what we're looking at in 2027.
So yet again, a lot of people get to look into the definition of what happens when the court reserves judgment. What does that mean? So basically the court says, well, we'll give you a time for you to come receive the judgment. So particularly for the ADC, well, all eyes are on that party to see what will be decided. Will the court say, well, go back to the lower court and go through the process, or say, well, the lower court shouldn't have even entertained this case in the first place. So wait to see when the Supreme Court will then call the parties and say, now we are ready to deliver judgment. But when it says the court has reserved judgment, it means we've heard you all, and we're going to make a decision, and when it is time, we'll give you a call. So we'll be counting down to that. But I must say that we may have just averted what could have been a major disaster in the aviation sector. And now the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, disclosed key federal government interventions aimed at reducing the financial pressure on airlines, and that follows rising concerns about the cost of Jet A1 fuel and the threat of service disruptions in the aviation sector. So the minister yesterday for hours met with a delegation from the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources. There were airline operators, oil marketers, and of course the press, as well as other stakeholders in that meeting. And it's a response to the sharp increase in aviation fuel prices, which operators say has become unsustainable. So some of the tough conversations were had, and Mr. Keyamo said that the president has approved a generous discount on certain outstanding fees owed to the federal government by the airline operators. So it looks like, well, we hope that the flights will not be suspended, or the operations will not be suspended right after this meeting, because I must tell you, the industry was really on the verge. And prior to this, we had a lot of delays, a lot of disruptions. So a lot of people were seeing the signs already. And when the airline operators came and said, well, we may just suspend operations, everybody sat up. So will this intervention change anything? We'll wait to see. By the way, if you're at the airport right now, you're heading there, let us know what your experience is like, so we really know if things have been resolved in that sector.
Well, very cheery news coming through from the aviation sector. Recall that they had cried foul, saying the astronomical increase in the price of Jet A1 fuel for aviation transport at that time was way too high, and there was some Shylock element involved. It was from, I believe, 1,000 Naira plus to over 3,000 Naira plus. Now that this relief has come the way of airline operators, we hope for more stability, and we hope for, reduction in the price of ticket fares, especially for air travelers, particularly because of, the critical nature of our aviation sector nationwide, worldwide rather, borders on national security. But we've been hoping, Nigerians particularly have been hoping for similar relief to come the way of the oil sector in the terms of petrol price. And this is reminiscent of calls by the labor unions a fortnight ago for some form of concession to local refineries, including Dangote Refinery, for crude oil prices to come down. We've been talking about subsidy for production, such that this will impact also on the price of petrol. And if, the aviation sector can get this relief, more patronized by, if you like, those higher on the social ladder, how much more Nigerians, who resort to the use of petrol for a lot of needs. And, the president had spoken to this some time ago during a meeting with party stalwarts, I believe at the presidential villa, where he said that he was meeting with his Minister of Finance and some considerations were being made, over that particular subject matter against the backdrop of the conflict in the Middle East. And so expectations are still coming through as far as that is concerned, because it doesn't appear as if there is any, resolution or any signs that the Middle East conflict will come to an end anytime soon. The pump price, the price of crude oil in the international market is still hovering around $92 to $93, depending on, Brent or the other brand of crude. And so incomes are not, going up, Mr. President. Taxes have gone up, and so salaries, are being deployed to meeting more critical needs. So Nigerians require relief as well.
Absolutely, spot on, Bukola. So I have done an analytics of the pump price of crude oil. So not pump price, crude oil price, I apologize. Crude oil price in 2014, I think around June, when there was a spike because of Iraq, ISIS, and all of those. Anything that happens in the Middle East that borders on security quickly brings an upswing or a spike in the price of crude oil. That's like more like what happens every other time. So on this particular one, it got to over $100, slightly over $100. It took about 5 months because it tapered, and around November it got back. So it was about 5 months. And then the 2022 incident that happened with Ukraine-Russia war also caused a spike, and that took about 1 year, March of 2022 to March of 2023. So that's why when I said at the time, now that it has gotten over $100 again, except this is going to be uniquely different. So if we use the data we have, so it may take about 5 months to 1 year for the crude oil price to actually be stable in less than $100. Yesterday, guys, it went back to $100, at least Brent crude, which is why we've been talking to government to have a clear plan. I commend, there's something I like about the minister, Festus Keyamo. He has his imperfection, but if it's about responding to things in the sector, he's always up there responding, whether it's an incident that occurred, an accident that occurs, or things like this. He's upwardly mobile when it comes to this work. But sometimes we wait for knee-jerk reaction, things to happen. We've been proposing, look at production subsidy. Now it has finally happened. So let me read what he said. First, that there are some debts that has been owed to government agencies like NAMA, FAN, NCAA. Maybe there will be a reduction or a discount in that debt. But more importantly, so Mr. President will, according to the report here, will put a team together, and he will give them a deadline to report to him as quickly as possible on government fees and charges and levies that we can take off domestic tickets for now to give respite to Nigerians who are buying their ticket. So you can see it's production subsidy in a sense, if I understand what you're saying, which is what we're saying. The government has been inactive, in my view, when it comes to how they want to handle this. And that inactivity could also be a strategy to say, let's see if supply goes up or if cost of buying goes up, maybe demand will be less, and that would naturally push. But this is crude oil. It's priced internationally. It's not in a Alaba market, or it's not in Ojuelegba. So, great move, as you said. Now that they've done it for the big men who fly. So what happens to the regular people who are more in number? How many people fly compared to how many people use the road? So they should start talking to the refineries. I'm sure there are levies, fees, and it may not be so much. Even if it takes 100 naira off, or 50 naira off, or 150 naira off, because I can almost guarantee consumption subsidy will never happen. because the government is very confident that they made the right decision. But at least production subsidy can happen. So well done, Minister Kayama, on this one. But it's a reaction that came because of a threat. So we're not proactive. We're just reactive. But nonetheless, it's better late than they say never, right, guys?
So there you go. We'll see how things pan out, particularly for petrol. Right, for the longest time, since February the 28th, we have talked about how to find ways to ease the burden on Nigerians. Yes, subsidy is gone, but our creativity is certainly not gone in handling some of these challenges, because it bites harder by the day, right? So it's good to see what's happening in the aviation sector, as has been said, but it will be great to see how we can tinker around what's happening with the everyday sector, with price of petrol. In the meantime, I should mention that the presidency is sort of making some clarification about the exit of the Minister of Finance, former Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, and Musa Dangiwa, former Minister of Housing. So the presidency is saying they resigned. They were not sacked. This is according to a statement by Mr. Bayo Ononuga, who said that the gentleman actually resigned. Right, but in the previous statements which he released on April the 21st, I should say it was actually Yomi Odunuga, not Mr. Bayo Ononuga. It was Yomi Odunuga, who's the Special Advisor, Media and Publicity to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, that's the SGF. And that statement did not mention anything about resignation. In fact, the statement said the President has approved minor cabinet reshuffle as Edun, Dangiwa leave FEC. So it's important to be clear in government messaging, because if you look through that statement, it said that these changes are aimed at strengthening cohesion. So he really put the buck on the table of the president, that the president changed his cabinet. In fact, he went on to say in approving the cabinet reshuffle, referring to the president, that the president has exercised his powers as conferred on him by sections 147 and 148. So is this damage control? Is this trying to give some sort of soft landing? Whatever the case is, government communication must be clear.
I think they mismanaged the communication on this one. And I choose to believe that Edun and the other gentlemen were fired. That statement was as clear as crystal. And for those who know what happens there, I'm not going to speak to facts. I'm not available. I'm not privileged to. Maybe there has been some running disagreement. There's an insider done by two national dailies that spoke about some things that are not in plain sight. So for me, this is just damage control, and it's sad because Minister Edun has been very close to the president, at least for the longest time. He served under him as commissioner. On that premise, I think the honorable thing should have been to ask him to resign. So he would have been the one to say, I have whatever. And then the president will now say, I have accepted. If that did not happen, I don't believe what Bayo Ononuga said. The man was fired. Because that statement did not come from me. It came from the SGF office, the man who coordinated administration within the State House. So the reason why we're doubling down on this is because people working with the president, the presidency, and the villa must realize that it's not a party thing, it's not a friends thing, it's an institution. So whatever comes out of there is Nigeria, good or bad. It's Nigeria. So these are very simple things that we're now trying to debate. Was he fired? Was it? It should have been managed better than this. So I choose to believe that the man was fired because the first statement was clear that the president even cited the provisions of the constitution that gives him the power to do that. And you want to walk back? No.
Yeah, and government communication 2 days ago had spoken to the effect that this was to enhance synergy.
Exactly.
Within government ministries and parastatals. So, the print does not lie. Initial texts do not lie. We can always refer to earlier, reports put out by the presidency. And so, the attempt to, change the messaging or communication begs the question. And don't forget that there had been word in the corridors of power that the president, had wanted to change things, particularly at the Ministry of Finance. And there are more details emerging now as to the exact reason that has informed this decision by the presidency. Of course, that is not official communication, but these things can hardly be hidden. And so the attempt to do damage control falls flat in the face as far as this is concerned. Is it to make the persons or of the that held the office look good? Because either way, it's the prerogative of the president, to hire and fire, and so their records speak for them as individual, whether they have done well or they have not done well. I believe that is left for those at the receiving end of their service to decide, and it may not necessarily impact on their future engagements. And so we appeal for better messaging next time, so coordination, amongst officials who manage the business of the presidency.
So that first statement, so that we'll read it for people to know what was said. Explaining the president's decision, Akume said, these changes are aimed at strengthening cohesion, synergy in governance, as well as achieving more impactful delivery on the economy to Nigerians through the Renewed Hope agenda. He said the president, in approving the cabinet reshuffle, has fully exercised his powers as conferred on him. The president, in approving cabinet reshuffle, let me read that again. The president, in approving cabinet reshuffle, has fully exercised his powers as conferred in by section 147, 148 of the Constitution as amended. These are not things we should be coming on TV to be debating and all of that. So, but for me, I just feel sad for, it's unfortunate that whatever is said now even gives impetus to the fact that, the man was really sacked. Rather than saying, we're clearing the air. I think he's been he's one of the, what I call the day ones of the president. And I think it should have been clear from the beginning to say, gentlemen, if you're leaving, excuse yourself. And the communication, these guys are experts. They've done this work for as long as I can remember.
Government should not take the people for granted. Do not think the people are fools, right? You released a statement, it was crystal clear, and now you come back and say, no, in fact, that statement, it means they resign. The people are not fools. And it really cuts across. If you're treating the people this way with just communication, how about the policies, the way you make decisions? Do you think the people deserve to be treated as indeed those that put you in power and not your servants? Food for thought. But hey, this was not handled well at all. And I think you should admit that this was a major gaffe from the government. We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at the front pages. Stay with us.